We're going to dive right in, and it seems like this is a theme that I talk about a lot, but it's just really frequent in the news. And there was a couple of different articles this week about the sheer number of security products. You know, the Wall Street Journal had an article this week called "If Companies Are So Focused on Cybersecurity, Why Are Data Breaches Still Rising?" And they're really referring to how there's ransomware as a service, and it's just becoming a commodity, and it's so easy to find flaws and vulnerabilities in these companies. Which goes back to the other article in the Cyber Why that I was reading from Richard Steenan, who talks about we have reached a milestone this week that, according to his count, we have now surpassed the 10,000 mark in terms of security products. Meaning we have over 10,000 different security products that you could go buy to secure your company. However, we know that you don't need all of those. We know that many of those are next-gen blinky lights that won't help you because you don't have the basics covered. And if the basics were easy to cover, I wouldn't have been talking about that for 20 years. We would have covered them a long time ago. And so you think about these companies that go out and they now have all the products they need, all the people they need, and they're still getting hacked. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars because they're not covering the basics. And so think about, just a simple analogy, a company that's got 2,000 employees and maybe they have 3,000 different assets that are on the network that have IP addresses, and they run their first vulnerability scan and they get 250,000 critical vulnerabilities, not high, medium, or low, but critical. How in the world is this possible? You think about, well, they're not turning on their automatic patching. I don't care if it's your edge firewall, your WAF, your application gateway, your endpoints. Everything should be turned on automatic updates. There's no time to test anymore. There's no time to roll it out for a week or 2 weeks because the 0 days are hitting. And we saw with the Connect, the Screen Connect, that it was from when this exploit was put out, it was exploited in 24 hours. And so you just need to turn all your automatic updates on. The chance of something breaking from an automatic update nowadays is so much smaller than the chance of you getting breached if you don't have it on. Think about these nation states. Look, they're not innovating. The hackers are not innovating because they don't need to. If you look at Mandiant and these other companies that come in and do these postmortems after these huge breaches, they're going to tell you the same thing every time. The staff wasn't trained, the security products weren't configured correctly, or the security processes were missing or untested or just ineffective or all of the above. And there's a lot of parallels between that and the health and fitness industry. You think about these commercials that come out and they're these innovations and shortcuts to dieting. You want to avoid the old and tired and reliable advice of diet and exercise, take in fewer calories than you burn. But yet you go right back to eating, thousands and thousands of calories, thinking that if you take the pill, but you eat the thousands of calories, you're going to lose weight. It's just not it's going back to the basics. And so, we've got to make sure we're focusing on the fundamentals, and not constantly chasing new products. We need to constantly be testing our products and our processes, not just once a year, but on a continual basis, making sure that they're configured correctly. We need to talk to folks, get a mentor, talk to security folks at dinners and other professional associations that have a core framework and a core set of tools that they take with them from job to job. Those are probably the tools you need, just that core set that takes care of the basics. And finally, look at your product to headcount ratio. If you've got 80 security products and 5 people to manage them, it's not going to work effectively. And so you've got to make sure you're doing good planning there. Moving on to physical security and home safety. Again, not going out and researching for this. It's coming up in the news every week. We talked about the different doorbell things and such. And here's another one that came out this week where there's a manufacturer of keypad locks. And they make 2 different companies. There's a company called Secure RAM and a company called Sargent and Greenleaf, S&G, that make these electronic keypad locks. And you may not have heard of those names because that's just a third party for many of these safe companies that buy those and integrate them into their safes. So whether it's a safe you have at your home or a safe in your office, if you have a safe with these keypad locks, they can easily be bypassed. The manufacturers put in back doors, similar to what we saw on the doorbell cams, where you could just press and hold and have the app. They have combinations where you can just press and hold and reset and bypass the lock, the combination that's on those locks. And so more to come on that. There's not a complete list of who all uses those in their safes, but certainly something you should look into. On Friday, certainly many of you probably experienced the McDonald's outage or read about it. I am not a McDonald's customer, haven't eaten there in 10, 15 years. I don't remember when, just not for me, but many, many, many people do. And they had a global technology system outage on Friday for a number of hours where they had to actually shut down some of their restaurants. And they've said, similar to AT&T and these other outages, it wasn't a cybersecurity outage. They said it was a third-party supplier that works with them who was making a configuration change. It goes back to change management and quality assurance testing. But it also goes back to your overall risk framework. That's a systemic risk. And so when we think about systemic risk, we can't just think about cyber risk. I had the privilege of getting my QTE certification a few months ago with the Digital Directors Network, DDN. And if you haven't looked them up, I would highly encourage you. They created a framework called the Director Framework, which is an acronym for data, information architecture, risk communications, emerging technology, cybersecurity, third parties, IT operations, and regulations, meaning that we need to look at all those because third-party risk is now disclosable under the SEC rules. So not just a cyber risk, but other systemic risks must be looked at in terms of single suppliers. Change Healthcare is the same issue where many companies relied on Change to do all their rebilling and their processing of statements for healthcare. And now some of the very, very small mom and pops that did compete with Change are getting inundated with these huge companies wanting to come over and use them since Change is still down and said they will be probably for the next 2 weeks. And so looking at your key major critical vendors, and do you have at least a second one that you could fail over to, not just technology-wise, but third-party-wise? That's something that I think a lot of companies haven't looked at and will be looking at very soon. And finally, we've got time this week. I wanted to do a kind of a product recommendation. I'm not, certainly not getting paid for this, although I will put a link in the comments that's a referral link. If you do choose to use them, it'd be great if you click on it. But that's a password manager. We talk about the basics. Where we're doing security awareness training for many companies and individuals and parent-teacher organizations, we talk about the importance of having a password manager for you and your kids, your family, because, and many people say, well, I don't want a password manager because all my passwords have been up with that company, but they're encrypted, they're salted, they're hashed. If that company gets breached, there's going to be a lot larger issue. But think about the risk is the same. If you have all the passwords written down in a Word doc or an Excel doc or on the Notes app on your phone, they're still all in one place. But with these password manager companies, they have hundreds, if not thousands of staff that are working around the clock to encrypt those, to make sure they're in multiple locations. They're searching the dark web to see if any of your usernames have been exposed. And also, many of these password managers have virtual private networks or VPN. So if you're out using public Wi-Fi at coffee shops, hotels, airports, you can turn that VPN on your phone, your tablet, your laptop, and protect the man-in-the-middle traffic and encrypt your traffic as well. So the one that I recommend that I've used for many, many years is called Dashlane. They have a plan where it's $5 a month for an individual, and you get the password manager and the VPN, or a family and friends plan for $7.50 a month, and that's up to 10 different accounts. So you could have 10 different phones with 10 different accounts and install on your browser and your phone, and it will randomly generate passwords for all your different applications and search the dark web for when they're exposed, automatically rotate them and change them if you allow it to, and then again has a VPN to go with it. So I would encourage you to look at Dashlane if you've not done that. Thanks again for tuning in. Be sure and put any comments or questions you have down below or email them to me. Be happy to answer them, and look forward to chatting with you again next week. Thanks.